Hey everybody, welcome to Holding Priority Podcast, the CEDH podcast. This is our ninth episode, and today's topic is discussing if there's a need for a ban list in specifically the CEDH format, in addition to the current ban list for regular casual EDH.
I think this one's going to be almost fully one-sided for me. I don't believe there's many cards that need a ban. Personally, I do have some takes that maybe we'll get into that may change slightly. However, for the most part, I like where the format is currently.
Yeah, and not to spoil my side, but I also don't think there is a need for a ban list, but I think the format would be healthier with some trimming. I think it kind of needs a refresh, and we will go into that in today's episode. But let's go into the shuffle up. So we saw quite a bit of comments on our last episode. It was really cool to see. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate everybody jumping in. We got some things wrong, which I mean we're Magic players too, so we'll get them wrong. Neither of us is a judge. So,
Yes, yeah. We do call the judges when we need them.
Yeah.
I will say that the last episode was kind of surprising for me because initially I didn't think very much of the Assassin's Creed set. I thought it was going to be heavily casual, but I do feel as we were closing in to the end of the podcast there, I had a newfound respect for it.
Yeah, we went into the podcast and I was like, I guess we could skip it, but I guess we should do an episode of Assassin's Creed. To me, it just kind of felt like Wizards just kind of dumped the set. Like there wasn't too much hype for it. The spoiler season wasn't really hyped up. It just kind of felt like it came out. It wasn't even a draftable set. It was kind of a mini set. They only put like 7 cards in the packs.
It was kind of in between different sets. I think.
Yeah, and they were already spoiling Bloomburrow and the other set that's coming out like near MagicCon in October. So
It also kind of followed up, but like Horizons.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
That's pretty hard.
it was in a tough place, and I think it was a really cool set.
Excuse me.
I'm at the, we were excited about it, but yeah, we had seen it with kind of fresh eyes, which I mean I felt was good for the podcast, but there are definitely some things that we got wrong, so we'll kind of go into it. Thank you for pointing them out.
Oh yeah.
So we had Jade Sushi. Welcome back. He says that lifelink does not stack, and he's correct. So previously, whenever it wasn't a keyword, it would stack. That's whenever I used to play, whenever it was relevant. And they have since made lifelink a keyword. So multiple instances of lifelink, the same lifelink over and over again doesn't stack, so you wouldn't be able to go infinite health with that one creature.
I think that kind of telescopes our age group as far as where we've been playing and where we have the length of time.
Back in 2009, you could
Yeah, right. Yeah. We have seen this game change quite a bit, and I think that's what keeps us playing, honestly.
We were talking about the legendary rule last night, where legendary used to be if you had a clone, you could play the clone and kill someone else's commander.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very different, but yeah. New rules is lifelink does not stack. That is only specific with lifelink. Like if there's something that is lifelink and then there's something like soul link, or just something that hasn't been errated to say lifelink that says you gain power equal to the amount of damage, or you gain life equal to the amount of damage this creature does, those would stack. But you can't stack 5 instances of lifelink and get 5 times the lifelink, which was what we thought was cool about the card. It's still a good card.
It made it far less good.
Yeah.
However, it was already, I think it was a uncommon at the
Uncommon,
printing.
and like for casual, it's great.
I mean, it's one of those low cost to the ground beaters that can fly. I mean, that in general, that's what it is.
Yeah, I still think it was worth featuring, but it was not nearly as cool as I thought it was. It's no longer infinite mana, infinite life outlet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then we had another comment from I might say the name wrong, and if I do, I'm sorry. A Stogono, about how he thought Apple of Eden Issue Relic is really cool. And I looked at it and I agree with them, so we'll go over it now. So Apple of Eden Issue Relic is a 4-cost artifact, legendary artifact. It taps, pay 4 life, sacrifice it, look at target opponent's hand and exile those cards face down. You may play those cards this turn, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. Until end of turn, whenever you play a land or cast a spell this way, its owner draws a card. At the beginning of the next end step, return the exiled cards to the owner's hand. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is pretty cool. The person that commented said specifically that it's really good if somebody has loaded up somebody's hand with like a Mystic Remora or a Rhystic Study, and you're kind of going for a win and you don't want to deal with their counters. You can crack this, and then all of a sudden, instead of them having a loaded 12, 14 card hand, now you have all of their spells in exile. They can't cast them, and you could potentially win off their combo in hand.
I think whereas that is a good protector of your win con, maybe, I don't see that being exactly used the same way. Just because it's at sorcery speed, so you're doing this all on your turn. You're not taking their hand on their turn and being like, haha.
Yeah.
I do think that whereas it's a good bait for a counter, like counter it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I take your hand. The scariest part of a Rhystic Study is if you draw 3 cards, I assume you have a counter.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want you to draw.
Yeah. I did see this, and honestly, kind of CDH biased. I looked at it and I went, it's a 4-mana artifact that taps and sacrifices itself. It's not better than One Ring, so it doesn't earn the spot. Which is not the goal of our card review podcast. This is a interesting card that if I got in a pack, I would want to put it aside, know where it was.
No, for sure.
Yeah, so I think we kind of undersold this card. Clearly we can't fit every card in that we think is interesting. We do have to make some cuts because I don't want to film a 3-hour podcast, but
whereas some of you may like that.
Yeah.
I think that we would get kind of in background noise and not so fun.
I was listening to that podcast and I could already kind of hear my voice crackling too. Yeah. So I had pushed myself.
I will note, because I actually pulled one of these cards. However, the one I'm looking at the moment is a full art. And
it's pretty.
It's awesome looking, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put this card aside now if I pull it in a pack. I didn't. That was another thing, is that was the first time I'd seen it whenever it was mentioned. And then we were actually playing with some people last night, and someone else brought up a pretty cool card that we had missed in our set review that we wanted to go over. So it's called Escape Detection. It's 1 generic blue. It's an instant. And instead of the 1 generic blue, it has a free running cost of return a blue creature you control to its owner's hand. Then what it does is return target creature to its owner's hand, and you draw a card.
Which, we didn't realize this initially, but the free running is, if you hit, it's a free spell, pretty much.
Yeah,
with condition.
I don't like how this is set up, because I thought the free running, it looks weird. Like, even the dash in the text looks like it's not a dash, it's like a line between the cards. The formatting looks wrong. They've had some problems with the Assassin's Creed set. Some of them refer to bounty counters, and then some of them refer to bounty counties.
Bounty counties.
Yeah, they kind of misprinted the set. I still think this is a interesting card. It's an uncommon. Anything that is return a blue creature you control to its owner's hand is super specific. I think Yuriko does not really worry about that too much, but also you're trying to ninjutsu your creatures anyway and return them to hand. So
Yeah.
you can't ninjutsu what you return to hand. You can stack both of them.
I mean, I guess in a deck with blue in your commander, you could um, pop your commander back to hand and then maybe pick up your dock side and recast.
Hmm.
But this is crazy on one major level here for me. This is a free spell that is an uncommon.
Yeah.
Like, what? Now, granted, you deal with certain things, but I think that playing in Commander specifically, you think of um, a lot of cards that are free or able to be cast for very little mana as more rare, and that's not necessarily what Magic is trying to do. Which is, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I like free spells. I think this should be put aside. I can't think of a deck this goes in, but I also don't play much blue, and the blue that I know is Blue Farm. So Blue
Yeah.
Farm wouldn't run it. So cool. I'm sure there's some decks that would really like it. There's probably some decks that they're like, yeah, my commander's blue, and I just don't care if I have to recast it. Like, I just don't know of the deck, but I still think it's a very cool card that could open up some possibilities for if there's not a deck right now, maybe new decks. Because there's also we featured that Eagle Vision card that for 2 draws 3 cards,
Yeah.
free running. Free running those could be 2 cards that elevate
Also,
combat centric blue decks.
not rare.
Yeah.
It's an uncommon. It's in a lot of people like it's in your pack that you're not really thinking of a big hit that is also like, well, I got this uncommon and it's decent.
Yeah, and not to brag on us, but oh boy, is Tax Collector good.
I am personally not a fan at the moment,
Yeah.
but not because it's bad, because it was used against me and stopped me from winning a turn.
We played a bit yesterday with full pods, which is kind of rare that we get a full pod together locally, but it was really interesting to see it because it hits. Everybody's like, man, I really wish I could swords it and actually cast my stuff without the tax. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I let it through, so I got to deal with it. And then I had the ability to emil it with dockside and then get to the point where I was just like, all right, I have infinite mana. You guys have infinite extra cost to your spells. I've technically silenced my turn at this point. Like,
Yeah, and if he had to pass, it would be silence on your turn
yeah.
and the next turn.
I
And
I could also just get to the point where it's like I've literally locked you out of playing spells. Pass my turn again.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I'm getting an infinite dockside combo, at that point, what is anybody gonna cast? With Rocco, I get all of my creatures out at that point.
Does
most
tax
likely.
collector? I can't remember exactly. Does it affect you as well, or is it only opponents?
Only opponents.
Ooh, that's right.
Yeah. Yep, it's good. But yeah, great card. You'll be seeing it a lot more, and if not, people are missing out.
That they're wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong. But yeah, we had a lot of interaction on our last podcast. It was clear a lot of new people listened to it all the way and left comments. Thank you so much. It is so cool to build this community. So really appreciate it. Please keep doing it.
Yep. Tell us we're wrong more often. I don't mind it.
If you have friends over and you're playing Magic, like put our podcast on and show it to them. Yeah, it's been really cool to see every episode, looking at the stats, seeing pretty much growth every week over week, that we're attracting new people. It really shows us that we're putting out quality content, which is our goal.
Also, we may have not said this prior that I can think of, but if y'all have something that maybe y'all want to hear us talk about,
Oh yeah, yeah,
that could be useful for us too, because ultimately we want you guys to get what you want
yeah.
necessarily.
And we will be doing a lot of set reviews. This is something that we're kind of recording in advance because all of August, every weekend is going to be a tournament. Which, heck yes, that sounds awesome.
I am way overdue. It's
Yeah,
been kind of a slow last couple months
yeah.
as far as tournaments go, but going to them is always fun. We do have where we drive. There is a community there that we don't get to see very often. So going is always kind of like seeing some of friends that we don't really see all the time, which is
From
great.
multiple states too.
Oh
Like,
yeah, and depending
yeah,
on how big the tournament is, it could be quite a distance for
yeah,
some of them.
yeah. This one, not spoil anything. We're filming in advance, so there's Bloomborough hasn't come out yet, but this will probably come out after our Bloomborough review. So if we miss anything, that just gets broken in Bloomborough. Haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that's it for the shuffle up. Thank you guys so much. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, rate us on podcast outlets. It really helps. Pretty much every time somebody interacts with what we're doing or listens to an episode all the way through, it pushes it to 2, 3, 5 more people.
Helps the algorithm for sure.
It helps a ton. So if you like it, please let us know.
Also, you could be on the shuffle up.
Yep, yeah. So let's get into CEDH ban list. So I do think it's kind of important. Usually, like in a podcast like this, I'd want to leave everybody in suspension of what our opinions are. But Ghost is of the opinion that he doesn't think that there should be a ban, and I'm of the opinion of I don't think it's needed, but I think it would make the format seem fresher. So with that in mind, we're gonna go into the first thing that we've heard people. What we're kind of doing to structure this is the types of complaints that we've heard about why a ban list is needed. We'll cover those topic to topic. That way we have some sort of structure, and it's not just like nothing should be banned. Everybody needs to build their deck better.
Unfortunately, he says that Crip says that, but it's more of this has happened. Like I've had these conversations about free spells, which is the first one, and then
From people that don't even play
for
CDH.
Thassa's as well, and you know, it's hard to explain what CEDH really is whenever you have this boogeyman in the closet that you think that, okay, well, they win turn 3, I don't get to do my thing, and I want to play a 4-hour game, and it's not fair that you can tap all of your mana and have a counter.
Yeah, I don't like that you can tap 2 mana and then take my 7 cost commander and then get 7 mana. That's not fair.
Yeah. But free spells, this is a tough topic, and we're not talking free mana rocks here.
Yeah.
This is your Force of Wills, your Fierce Guardians, your Deadly Rollicks. And Deadly Rollick is not crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Um
You can go first on this because you're more of the counter magic player.
I think that it's very healthy for somebody to have a bit of fear trying to start their combo. It also elevates the level of the player to decide on, does this person have a counter? You know, they have their commander out, there hasn't been that spell. you know, the thought process. Um, I don't really think of any free spell off top that I'd be like, it shouldn't be here.
Yeah. I think they're all really good. And I feel like they all serve a purpose. Just to start with the craziest free counter spell, Fierce Guardianship. Um, it's a very specific. Not, the only free counter that can only hit everything is Force of Will. So there's kind of just, if you're summoning a creature, for the most part, you're like, they could have a Force of Will. Yeah.
And y'all can't see me, but I'm air quoting here.
Yeah.
Free spell.
Yeah.
Because there is some issues with it. You give up a card to play this spell.
You give up two.
Oh yeah,
The spell and the one you exile, yeah.
For instance, we may or may not have been playing a game where I had just a little bit of a board state. It wasn't crazy, and a blasphemous act from somebody that may not be named
It was me.
gets played, and I ended up dropping Force of Will to counter it with a Strix Serenade, and I knew what I was doing at the end of the day. I didn't think that there was an initial backup, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah, I was really glad to see that Strix and Force of Will gone, because I was on Atali and I was just like, oh, well, now without much interaction, I can drop my Atali.
It's also hard for me to politic a little bit of being like, you should let me have my board.
Yeah.
But I mean, because somebody else had countered as well.
Yeah. So once you drop the Force of Will, somebody was just like, you have 3 creatures. We only have 1, and none of ours matter. Yeah, I want this to go through. But I was looking at where I was just like, you are a truly desperate man. You have dropped your Force of Will and your creature counter all in one. You're 2 cards away now. You had 6 in hand. Now you have 4. There's a huge difference between 6 and 4. I know that if I pass, I have a Tali without much, hesitation. Like,
and also, this may have not been said either, but the person I would say to your left, which would be next in rotation after you, because you
Yeah.
were next,
yeah,
had Draneth.
yeah,
So I actually dressed down
yeah, oh, yeah.
to play my commander, and it was an all waste for me, but it was okay. I mean, I'm not salty or anything. I really love whenever Atali just plops out and steals all my stuff.
I won the next turn clearly. Like,
But it is what it is.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you do exile a card is not something you can get back. And that's for Force of Will. Also, Force of Will, a lot of people don't talk about this. It's free, but it costs 5. So, those Adnaz decks, they're running Force of Will, and it hits them for 5 life too. Like,
It's funny because you'll, like, whenever I add Nas, if I don't see Force of Will or haven't used it, I will not go under like 7 life.
yeah,
Just because I don't want to get lightning bolted in the face and die.
yeah,
I don't want to pull Force of Will and then die.
yeah. You don't want to pull Force of Will and then have a tutor in hand that is -2 life, and you're like, I can't cast this tutor. It'll kill me.
Yeah. So whereas free spells, yes, you can cast them if you meet the requirement. I don't think that they're necessarily fully free.
Yeah.
And I think that kudos to Wizards because it keeps a different type of requirement to be met. It's not just a mana based.
Yeah. I mean, the freest of free is Fierce Guardianship, which, yeah, it's arguable in Commander that having your commander on the field isn't a big requirement. But I mean, also some people's commanders are like, like Tivit, it's 5. That person has invested 5, and they just get a free counter out of it. That's not even for everything. And the other thing about free spells is if the game was just, oh, okay, let me look around, everybody's tapped out, without contest, I can just play whatever I'm going to play and no one can stop me. That'd be boring. Like, I really like whenever, for example, if there's a Rogsai and we all are just like, Rogsai can't win yet, and we've been building our board as we should, and it's turn 1 or 2, and then Rogsai just goes, I think I got this. It's really exciting for me to just be like, oh no, like, this is it. And then all of a sudden somebody comes up with a, Hail Mary, and they're just like, in response.
To be fair too, some of our listeners, if they've followed for a while or know that I played Tivit, I would have to correct you just once. Tivit
Oh,
is 6.
he's 6?
He is
Oh yeah, because
6.
he's 3
He's
white,
Esper.
black. Yeah.
So,
So he's a Tali -1.
it's bad.
Yeah.
It's
Not
it,
Godzilla -1, a Tali -1
if
Tivit.
if he gets countered, you make sure he doesn't.
I was in my head, I was seeing the 3 generic, and I forget that he's 3 color. I always forget that he has white, so I was just like, yeah, 3 generic, that's 5.
Now I probably stopped 1 or 2 people from yelling at the screen and saying that I didn't
Or
say anything.
they left a comment, and now they have to leave another comment.
They're like, it's really 7.
Yeah.
I did look it up. Don't. But no, I don't think free spells is where at any stretch of the imagination, if somebody was wanting to ban stuff and they play CEDH, I don't think it's going to be in free spells.
And I also, I don't really play blue very much. The fact that I'm just like, while I don't really have access to them outside of deflecting SWAT, I do think free spells are really good. Like, they, especially free counters, they keep the game interesting. They keep everybody on their toes. It makes a lot of things much more complex interactions rather than tapped, 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 cool, go, win.
I think we'll see a common denominator here too of CEDH players also wanting it to be. We are really not wanting a 3 to 4 hour game.
Yeah.
And free spells helps with that, be it free rocks or free counters.
I mean, it's also nice how you say that free spells make the game go faster. It sounds like they would make them go slower because there's more ways to stop wins. But in my mind, I get what you're saying. You're correct, because if I can build my board and know I have a free spell to stop a counter, I'm able to build my board and pass. I'm not building my board, keeping 1 or 2 mana up, and slowing myself down to have interaction. So while it would seem like, well, stopping other people's wins doesn't make that make the game go longer? In my mind, the answer is no, because I'm not having to slow down my building. I'm able to build and keep up with everybody, and I also have the option to protect everyone just because it's in my hand.
And a lot of free spells never. The fear of a free spell could also never actually see play.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that it could.
Yeah.
It's kind of like trying to weigh an op agent if it's on the field.
Yeah.
If it's on the field, like, you don't know what. Like,
Yeah.
you're not in the other person's hand unless they're tutoring. So you may have 3 tutors and op agent is holding back that type of win, but you wouldn't know.
Well,
So-
it's also interesting because I play 2 different decks that have blue in it, that a lot of what I can do is revealed to the table. So like Paco, Halden, and Grolnok. There's a lot of times where I will tutor and someone will see me get a Flusterstorm in hand, or I'll have a creature out that I can flash in to counter something or slow something down where they have to pay more. And people will just be like, well, I'm not going to cast this because I know he's just going to Flusterstorm it. And then the next person will be like, well, since you didn't cast anything, he's going to Flusterstorm my thing. I don't want to cast mine. And then the third person will stop and there'll be a full turn where I'm like, I still have the Flusterstorm, guys. Like,
Yeah,
this is not a problem that we can just ignore. Like,
you're gonna have to do something.
you're either gonna not do something and then I just win, you know. But yeah, I mean, I definitely understand. You can say like, well, no spell should be free, especially counter spells. But in action, they make the game a lot more dynamic, make the game a lot more fun to play. Even as somebody on the receiving end of the free counters, for the most part, I'm very for them being healthy for the format.
To be fair, I have lost a game due to a free spell.
I think we all have, yeah.
Like, and I don't mean necessarily that I cast it or somebody cast it on me. One of the first tournaments we went to, I Pact of Negation somebody
Yeah.
and completely stopped this guy. But he looked at me and he goes, I can take him out of the game right now. It's like ripped all of my rocks and everything back. And I was like, fair.
Yeah.
Just fair, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even mad about it. I'll try to win the next game.
Also, at that point, too, it seems like there would almost be a tie and it wouldn't matter too much if you were out. Like,
Well, this was like turn 3 or 4.
Oh,
It
okay.
was
Yeah.
we were gunning.
yeah.
I hit an intuition with an op agent.
Yeah.
So he was really salty.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
So,
if you go free counters, you also silencing a turn. Like if you're, I've heard people be like, well, which is kind of the other end of the spectrum if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, because if you're thinking that silences should be stopped, but you're cool with counters,
yeah.
I
I've
think
heard-
you're just all over the place.
I've heard this argument from the same person. They're like, well, I don't think there should be free counters. Also, silence is BS. And it's like, where are you? Like, what's your stance? Like,
You just want to play,
yeah.
go play solitaire.
Yeah.
Just play whatever card you want.
Yeah, go to Moxfield and do dry runs. Like,
Yeah. I think silences cause a very healthy dynamic to the game.
mhm.
100%.
There needs to be a card that just goes, I'm checking to see if I can win. Great, I can win. The biggest problem that I've heard other people express about decks that aren't really CDH, like the ones that are like high power. One example I always use, the 5-color Omnath. That's a deck that when we kind of started wanting to play high power commander, we CDH'd that deck out on a budget. We didn't have like, mana rocks, but we made the best deck that we could without a bunch of very expensive cards. And that deck was powerful, but there would be times where people would just go, you clearly are going to win. Look at your board state. Can you close it? And we'd be like, no. Like, I have 1 million black mana floating, but no.
Maybe in the next 3 turns.
Yeah, and it was just miserable for me because I felt like everybody was just looking at me and they're like, come on, like, do the thing. And I'd be like, I can't. And then they would have a miserable time because they're like, my turn doesn't matter. I am going to play it, but pass. I like that CDH for the most part, the game gets out of control and then somebody wins. And silence helps that a lot. Silence lets people know that they can, with insurance, go for their win. I can play silence, and if that silence gets countered, then I'm like, cool, I'm not going to go for my win. It pushes the game along. Also, too, the thing I like about silence is it gives non-blue decks the ability to compete. If I can silence, I technically have a counter that says I can do something about you interacting on my turn, and I'm not in blue, which is powerful. And then also, if somebody does like an ad nause on somebody's end step or during their turn, I can be like, cool, resolve it. Now that ad nause is here, I'm going to put a silence on top. You can do whatever you want with ad nause. You just can't drop it all.
Yeah,
We all get another turn. You know?
Discard your hand now.
It's a good defensive and offensive spell. I think it's very healthy for the format. Keeping your win safe, stopping other people. Very flexible card.
I also may or may not be a big player of the value abolisher.
Yeah, yeah. Same.
I said that yesterday, and the guy we were playing with was like, "That's you said that multiple times. Don't act like you didn't."
I mean,
Yeah.
I played a Grand Abolisher just to make sure that my tax collector would go through because I was like, all right, I know you guys want to stop tax collector, so Grand Abolisher. Cool, no one countered my Grand Abolisher, and even if you did, you'd probably burn the counter on Grand Abolisher rather, and then I would just cast the tax collector anyway. So cool, tax collector. I do have a Grand Abolisher. It's sitting here, pretty scary for my next turn. I'm not going to
Pass.
follow it up with anything. Honestly, you don't know that.
Yeah, it's needed, and I think that really a card we don't talk about a lot, but I think is really good to have in green as well is the cat that silences.
Oh yeah, the Selesnya.
It's
Yeah,
I liked it. As soon as I seen it, I was like, this is a cool card.
yeah,
Green could really use it.
yeah.
And then
Bringing, I mean, Veil of Summer 2 and Veil of Autumn. I mean, not as good, but those are pseudo silences that help bring the game to the close. Like the game needs a way to go. All right, I've amassed enough value. I'm going to close it. And I feel like that's what casual kind of lacks, which really separates the formats. I think if you took silences away, you'd take white and green kind of
out
out
of
of
the
the
equation.
equation, as far as like what their color identity is and what it does. I mean, like your stuff being uncounterable isn't really a silence, but for the most part, kind of is. Like
I think that it would push blue way higher.
it's already high. Like
Like
almost every good deck has blue. Like a lot of people will look at CEDH and go, if I don't have a deck that has blue in it, I can't compete. And that is true when you kind of just start out with CDH, but I think the reason that I avoid blue so much is it's kind of a test on my skills of I don't have blue in my deck, but I can still compete with the blue decks. And I also have deck building that's good enough to where even without blue, I'm never down and out. Like even in a Tali, there are times where like I really expect the blue players to do something and they don't. I'm just like, guys, I'm not supposed to be the one saving us. I'm going to, but I should not be.
I would argue you do that if we play a night or a session of multiple games. It happens one out of every four.
I
Easy.
save, in my opinion, not to brag, I save the game more than the blue players do. Like not counting you because you are in tournaments and you know what you're doing, but
Also, to be fair, I will not save a table.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of times, if we're at this point and I can't win, let's end it.
But I play for ties too.
I don't really. Not normally. I mean, if I can, cool. If I can't, um, yeah.
I try not to king make, and I don't really think king make is. I don't think that really happens unless it's out of malice. Like if you're trying to win and I can stop you, I'm going to try to stop you now. I won't tainted pact my deck away to stop you, you know. But if I have like a lightning bolt and,
I
you know,
actually feel a little attacked here because I have done this. However, it was a tactic.
yeah,
Let me be clear. I told the person because I only needed a turn. I told him that I will stop you.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
But you're
and
not
they got
king making at that point though. Like
technically it would have.
you have your you have your stuff in hand, you know. Like,
I was ready to go.
yeah,
However, I had to make it a whole rotation, and I was trying, not necessarily trying to bully the tactic because I don't really like how that sounds, but I was informing the person that if you become the problem, I will counter it.
yeah.
And then you open up the next person.
Yeah, it's I have seen tournaments say that threat of interaction is a violation, which I don't agree with.
I
Like
don't either.
there's definitely ways to do it wrong. And I think, you know, not to name names, but there's popular podcasters, streamers that did it wrong, you know, in early July, and they're not welcome back to Top Deck GG tournaments. But
Yeah, this is all hypothetical.
yeah, not naming names, but there's ways to, for example, being like, what are you tutoring? If you don't show me, I'm just going to counter the tutor. You literally need to go in your deck, grab your tutor, flash it to me in the table, and then put it in hand. If I let it resolve, and it's like, nah, dude, just counter
A
it.
hundred
Yeah,
percent right there. That is
yeah,
I'm just counter me
yeah.
at that point. Counter it or don't.
I will, and I like to say warn people that it's like, hey, you might think that you're slipping in before this person that's going to win. That is not the case. What you're going to do is you're going to make me burn all of my interaction, peter yourself out, and then you're going to pass to somebody that's going to win, and then I can't stop them. And if you want to go ahead knowing that information, do it. Cost everybody the game. Or you can do something where you're not so much of a threat that all you're doing is set up. I will allow you to do so, and then you can try after I counter the next guy. And if they agree to it, cool. Some people will try to call my bluff, and I will say, for me, 95% of the time, I'm not going to bluff something that big. I'll be like, I do have it. I will show it to you if it'll stop you. You know, like,
And at the end of the day, I get both sides. Like if you're in that position, let's say you're Rogsai, just go for it.
yeah,
I mean, if you're Crick, I mean, you don't have your game plan is not to be slow and set up because at the end of the day, somebody will try to tell you that every game you play
Yeah.
because you're Crick.
and there's some decks like I will
Carrick.
see Rogsai as a good example where part of your combo is going through so many cards that if you get stopped, maybe you do still have answers for the next person, and cool, you know, if you can do that in a responsible way. Crick's another thing where it's like, I'm gonna do so many things, gain so many cards. Yeah, if you stop me, I might not win, but I'll craft my hand, and part of my crafting my hand could be stopping that next person. So I'm still gonna go for it. Like
Yeah.
do your worst. Yeah.
Again, you got to play your game as well.
Yeah.
But I do feel like um, having that level of being able to try and silence and then go for it does make it very, very healthy. Like
Yeah.
I I don't think there's one silence effect that I would say. There's clearly better ones. I think silence is probably the best you could get. I think that Grand Abolisher is solid too, but
Yeah, there's quite a few. Silence, Grand Abolisher, there's Orm's Chant. There's one that's on one side it's a red creature, on the other side it's a white count, like Silence. It's healthy. I also think that it's good whenever you are looking at somebody and they're just so far and beyond away from the table where it's like there is not enough interaction to stop this person really. You know,
yeah,
the fact that I can go, I am just going to silence them, and we need to fight for this silence. And if I silence them, they have to pass, and then we all get another turn where we could either win or build up to where we can actually combat this person. It's a nice way to go like, hey, I'm not in blue. but I can help us here. Rock size going off. I did not want to burn the silence on them. I wanted to use it to win, but they're about to win. So can you guys protect my silence? Like,
Also, I think if you've played CEDH more than 7 times, you've been held hostage by something like a ranger captain,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is it frustrating? Maybe, but it also drawn out 3 extra turns. Like, that happens.
And I mean, there's also times where you can just be like, I accept the ranger captain is there.
Let's just go.
I am just going to set up, and then I will just go, and you cannot. I will be so set up you can't stop me.
Yeah, it doesn't matter after the first spell.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, very healthy, I think.
yeah. Same. You know, if we're talking about things that are healthy for the format, free mana rocks. Very similar reasons. They move the game along. If we didn't have free mana rocks, it would just be land pass, land pass, land pass for 1 or 2 turns.
At least 1 or 2 turns.
It also adds a lot of variety to the format because, you know, Atali, you look at Atali and go, nah, there's no way he could be a CDH commander, but it's like, I can load up my decks with, you know, a lot of mana, a lot of them being free mana rocks.
I think you run just about every free rock.
Everything I can. Like it's
I don't know about
Atali
Amber,
out.
but
No, not Amber.
Even Lion's Eye, I think you run too.
And I don't combo with Lion's Eye. I pitch my hand away to get Atali because then I get 4 new cards that are free.
Yeah. I think that it's so healthy for the format that it actually almost makes the format.
If we didn't have free mana rocks, we would no longer see commanders that are higher than 4 mana. I would say like those commanders that are higher than 4 mana could not keep up with Rogsai, Blue Farm, Sisay. You would see a sharp decline in the variety of commander, which people play commander for the variety. Like for the most part, like, you know, there's been many times where I've been like, Wizards doesn't really support the game I play. Like they are very hands off, and they're like, we're not going to interact with commander. It's not meant to be a casual form or a competitive format. However, we make 70% of our money probably. You know, I don't know the numbers, but we make a lot of money off commander. But we're not going to support it. But we will support Pauper, and we will support. You know, no shade on Pauper, but it's a format that people made so that they didn't have to spend money with Magic, and Magic is like, yeah, we'll support it, but they give no care to their biggest cash cow, which is another podcast entirely.
For sure. And again, luckily, Magic the Gathering is one of those card games that has different formats, and that you could play all different kinds of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Even if you're wanting to homebrew, what is it, like cubes? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I've seen them as well.
Yeah, people are really proud of their cubes. Like it's not something that I personally am interested in, but I do like to see people like sharing their cube and like what they put in, what they think is spicy. Like I'll see that on Twitter pretty often, and I'm like, this is not for me. However, I'm glad that it exists for people, and they're just super proud of it. You know?
On a CEDH ban list though, you couldn't do free rocks at all.
Yeah.
It would cause casual play, and you would see things like you're no longer seeing green be the worst color.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the best now.
I mean, also too, if I'm a good example of somebody that I was like, I just don't want to see mana rocks. Like I wanted to have 2 decks, and I had one. I wanted to have 2 decks ready. And whenever I looked at the decks, I was like, what's keeping me from making 2 decks? It's the amount of mana rocks, how expensive they are. I'm not rebuying a second mana crypt, you know? Yeah. So I was like, let me set up a deck where I just take mana rocks out of the equation. And it ended up being one of my best decks when I first started, where it was Tenma Kodama. I have a full primer on it, and I might leave it in the comments, but I don't play it anymore because it kind of fell out of favor. But I would just I was just like, I don't want free mana rocks to be a thing. I want us all to play good Christian Magic, and that's the name of the deck.
That
And
was
the whole thing is Oof, Null Rod, the white enchantment that has a gargoyle on it that stops activate abilities of
I
artifacts.
can't think of that one
I
right
can't
now.
think of that one off the top, but like
Just leave it in the comments.
Manglehorn, Dauntless Dismantler. I had 5 very real options to shut down mana rocks and also put rule of law effects because I was just like, I do not want this. I want to take this away from people. People should not be able to just do whatever they want. And I played the deck, and there's 2 decks that I have gotten a top 4 with. I got second place with that Timna Kodama deck, and then I got first place with Atali. So it's an effective way to play the game. And if you don't like free mana rocks, then do something about it. Just make a deck where it's not viable. You have that option. You know, they've printed those cards.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's also one of those decks that I think the biggest kryptonite for it wasn't necessarily CEDH decks. I think for you it was more um, the guy that likes his vampire deck
Yeah, yeah.
and comes in, which
Yeah,
cool,
yeah.
cool. But
It was a deck where if I won my first round, I was going to top 16 because I would be in the top echelon of decks, how the system would place me.
yeah,
But if I got into and even like people that were new to CDH, like I had a problem with a Yuriko deck. The one that I top 2'd, I had a problem with a Yuriko deck where the guy was just like, I don't like stacks. I don't agree with them. I'm going to remove them. And it was just like, he was tapping out on his turn to remove all of my stacks and then passing to other people. And the other people were like, great, now that I'm unlocked, all of this stuff in hand is castable. Boom, 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 boom. And a lot of people didn't understand that, where it's like, you might not like it, and I get it, but don't remove it and then pass. If you want to remove it and try to win, do it. I agree with that. But don't just go, I don't like it, kill it, pass, and then open the door up to somebody to win. And a lot of people didn't understand that. And it was frustrating. And it also at the time it kind of felt behind. I might revisit it at some point, but there's so many reset the board cards in Commander now in blue that I don't think I could ever go back to it and do well. It'd be a lot of politicking, and it's a fun deck to play. Like honestly, I have thought about putting it back together and just playing it for fun and go, I know that I'm not going to top 16 with this deck, but also there's decks like Rocco. I'm not going to top 16 anyway with a bunch of work. This is a deck that clearly I'm putting some weights on my legs and running a tournament or like running a marathon. However, at the end of the day, if I top 16, I can be like, I top 16 with this deck, and it's not very good, and I just had a blast, and that's a win for me. You know?
I didn't help that deck's rise to stardom at all. I politicked the heck out of trying to get people to remove stuff.
Yeah, it's also very easy to go, Dranith, don't you want to have your commander at some point?
Yeah,
And then
please.
somebody go, yeah, you're right. And then they kill it and then pass. And then you're like, well, now that Dranith's gone, I'm going to Underworld Breach.
Yeah,
Thank
Underworld.
you. You know, so kind of moving off that tangent. Cool tangent. But I have also heard that there's people that want to ban certain commanders in the format. Do you think that is a viable ban?
I agree. Ban Sisse immediately.
Yeah, I also agree. Ban Timna. You don't have to ban Blue Farm, just ban Timna.
I mean, you know, not we're going a little bit farther than I wanted to there. Just Sisse is fine.
Yeah, I don't play it, so I'm cool with that. and I could throw one in. Yeah.
I don't think that that's healthy. That this is this idea, whereas it's a very almost hateful idea of just this commander is rough and it's hard to play against. I don't like it.
Yeah, ban it.
I don't think that it's healthy. because
Yeah.
you start to open a box that's not necessarily easy to close. Because then
Hmm.
what dictates?
Yeah.
I mean, commanders are meant to have a deck built around them, and if it's built around them in a way that is very efficient, does that mean that commander is busted?
Yeah.
I
There's also this is not an argument unique to card games either. We used to play, and I'm just gonna bring it up because they're re-releasing it, but Marvel vs. Capcom 2 always complaints about Cable. He's spammy, blah 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 blah. It's like, put Wolverine. Wolverine dashes and can just hit him. It doesn't matter. Like
yeah,
they're like, why I shouldn't have to put Wolverine on my team. It's like, and you don't. That's true.
you could also just get shot.
Yeah, you could also just get shot, or you could get level up your jump game to where you know when to punish this character, and then you're like, oh, okay, he started to shoot, he can't move, he's locked into this animation, pow, and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, then shut up. Same thing, and kind of different. This is going to launch us into like a different conversation, but I related, but I used to play competitive Pokemon, and this was back whenever Diamond and Pearl first came out. And I actually would play competitive Pokemon to support myself. So I needed to win one in every three tournaments to be comfortable, or place like with some money. And the prizes weren't big; they were like $200, $300, but it was something that not only was I doing it for fun, but I did kind of need to win. And I played Snorlax on my team. And I played other things, but I specifically ran, and I thought I made it. This is before the internet was like really big and there was Discord and all that. But I played Curse Snorlax, where I didn't care about my speed and I would just bring my attack and defense to ridiculous levels, rest, and then sweep with Snorlax. And I won a tournament, prize paid out, update to the rules, can't play Curse-Lax anymore. And it felt extremely targeted because it was just like, so I win a tournament, and then all of a sudden there's a new rule where I can't play my sweeper, my main character that I like. Clearly, I could have run Alakazam or anything else. I like Snorlax. I like the way he played. I decided to run Snorlax rather than some of the overused characters. And it just felt very specific, and I was just like, I'm not going to play this anymore. Yeah.
To be fair, we also played another game that was very similar to where characters would change constantly and
Oh, League of
builds,
Legends. Yeah.
yeah, builds would be different. And whereas that's somewhat how their model is now, it was very frustrating to get good with something and then have it change immediately.
Yeah.
And in this type of game, as far as Magic, you're playing Commander so you can use some of your cards that you maybe played. I don't know, we played in like '05, so some of my cards are
Yeah.
from that time frame.
You're also very attached to your commander, like,
Yeah.
too. Like, you don't decide to build a commander deck and not like the commander.
Mm.
And if you do that, you're maybe just playing it in local pods. You're probably not playing it in tournaments. Like the thing, and like you said about League of Legends, is I put a lot of time into it, but not really money. And that was the same thing about Snorlax, where I was like, I would have to put in a lot of time to shift away from Snorlax. I'd have to build a new team. It wouldn't cost me anything though. There are people that have $16,000 Magic decks where they've blinged it all out, and like more too. Like
I'll
masterpiece everything.
I'll I'll let one of you guys in the comments just look at a general blue farm
Yeah, yeah,
deck. I mean, mine when I go to tournaments, I don't proxy
yeah.
very
Well,
often.
because we go to tournaments that don't allow proxies.
And that being said, I've invested.
Yeah,
I like playing. It's something that's fun to do.
yeah.
I mean,
Like if the one commander that I think is maybe worthy of a ban, and if I had to point, if someone was like, tell me what commander needs to be banned, or I'm gonna burn your house down. I would be like Sisay, only because the ability is hard to play around. She only costs 3. Um, if she hits the board, you can't swords her, because if she hits the board, she can pop her ability, and she doesn't care if the ability resolves without her. But the Sisay deck is so unique because it has so many different planeswalkers that no one would ever build. Is if you banned a Sisay player's deck, you are telling that player, don't play anymore. There's no way for them to recover. They would have to, and most commanders, you run cards that would not go in any other deck, and that's why you like the commander. And then if they banned your commander, it's just, hey, I appreciate you sunk a couple $1,000s into this deck. I don't want you to play anymore. And
Yeah.
then those people are probably not going to show up to tournaments anymore, at least for a little bit till they recover. And then if I go to tournaments where there's no turnout, maybe I don't play. So it's a cascading effect,
I think that initially it's just a kind of a hate play. And whereas, I play one of the top decks, and arguably Sisay is probably a better deck. Um, it is nice to be able to point at Sisay and be like, that is big bad right there.
Yeah.
Stop Sisay immediately. Can't have commander, can't have mana. Don't let it have anything.
Yeah.
Just let me have my Mystic Remora.
And like one thing that I always think about on the subject of banning commanders is I, among many people, have probably heard people that played a couple years ago and they're like, oh man, I miss my Tireless Pilgrim deck. Because it's one of the only legendary creatures that the Commander Council fully banned. And the reason that they banned it was pretty much, not quoting them, but it was, this is a 5-color soup deck. It's not interesting. It's just 5-color good stuff.
Mm.
And we'll print Kenrith, like it was
I was
basically
about to
the
say
answer.
Kenrith is fairly similar.
Yeah, as I remember, and I didn't play the deck, so I don't quote me on this, but as I remember, they were like, it's just boring, so we're gonna ban it. Like it's not over the top, it's not over the top good. It's just we don't really think that this should exist on kitchen tables. We're gonna ban it, and it was the only time they ever did it. And I will still, to this day, they did it, I want to say 3-4 years ago. He was from a core set, and they don't do core sets anymore. I think he was from M20, so I think it's been 4 years. I'll still hear people be like, man, I miss my Tireless Pilgrim deck, blah, blah, blah. I should have just kept it together and asked if people were cool with rule zeroing it. And like, it's been years, man. Like, move on. Like,
And then you have cards that clearly are uber powerful, like Gristlebrand, which
yeah,
please keep that banned for now.
yeah.
But no, as far as commanders go, you should be able to. Now you can in casual, but commander in general is this creature is cool. I want to build a deck. There is clearly higher tier decks, but I don't know the exact numbers. You have more of an exact, but most of the decks are newish. They're not popular in tournaments. The ones that win are popular in tournaments.
Yeah.
The ones that are in top 16 are popular.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I may say this wrong. Are winning tournaments that are at the higher end, but most players go in and they try whatever deck they're feeling. So
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily against that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also people that, I mean, I will say I kind of fall into this camp where I know if I put together Blue Farm and I went into a tournament and I practiced with it a lot, I would probably win more. Those wins would feel somewhat empty for me, and the losses would feel bad because I'd be like, I am playing one of the best decks of the format, and I still am not winning, But at least if I walk in with like Rocco everybody's just like, I don't know what Rocco's doing. So I have brewer advantage. And on top of it, if I win with Rocco, it feels very satisfying. Like, and if I get to top 16 with Rocco, I'm just like, this, I worked my butt off. A Tolly somewhat is kind of the same since I don't have like blue, but there are times with a Tolly that I'm just like, yeah, this win feels very hollow. You know?
It's definitely the fisherman's big fish type of stories
Yeah.
that you hear, and that's really where tournaments go. Like the commanders are part of it. So I don't find that being a problem.
Yeah.
I do think that the next topic is where people really get salty.
Yeah. And I will say, like, previous to this was more like complaints people have, but I don't really give them any weight. And I will say from here on, these are the complaints that I feel are worth discussing, not in depth, but like specific cards.
Hmm.
I feel like there are some weight. Clearly, I'm not really for too many of them. Like I said, need a ban list? No, but I do think that there is refreshment needed, and I think a ban list would be the way to do that. But you can go ahead with, because this is kind of your baby.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
So this is definitely targeted to me.
yeah,
Um, Popular win cons, Thassa's Oracle, Underworld Breach. Not that Blue Farm plays any of that stuff,
yeah.
obviously. We're all Christian Magic here. However, I am under the opinion that if you take away, let's say, consultation Thassa line, whereas you will make a lot of casual players really happy, I think you'll draw out games to unreasonable times, and that you'll also um, take away from some of the other colors that may have not had a win con previously.
Hmm.
I mean, you would really limit certain red decks without Underworld Breach, and you would really limit all Demir without Thassa.
Yeah, I mean, my thought on Thassa's Oracle is, like you said, there needs to be an end to the game, and Thassa's Oracle is healthy for the format because it's a check to see if people are running enough interaction to stop it. Like, if someone can get through their entire Thassa's Oracle combo and win the game, and they didn't have a counter to back it up, like, that's on you. That's not, oh, this is broken. Somebody at the table should have been able to stop that combo. It's a creature, and it's a 2 cost instant, or a 1 cost instant. And if you disrupt that combo in any way, they're out of the game. Like, let's say someone goes for a Thassa's combo, and you Angel's Grace, that person's done.
Yeah,
Their
they're
deck is
gone.
gone. Yeah. Let's say you endurance them. Again, that person has exiled most of their deck. It's gone. It's a very risky play. There's very many ways to disrupt it. There's very many ways to stop it. So if it's a good check for you to be like, this dude keeps sneaking in a Thassa's Oracle in my play group. Clearly, I'm not where I need to be. Let's go back to the drawing board. To me, it's kind of like Slicer in pods, where I think every pod should experience Slicer because it will make their politics go way up, and also you can go, I could not remove a Slicer before it literally just punched everybody in the face to death. I need to go back to the drawing board on my deck. Something's wrong. Yeah.
Definitely one of those things where, does it feel good to get Thassa turn 3, turn 2? No. But at the end, you're also taken away from that player that was able to do
Hmm.
it. Like, I'm big on those stories too.
Yeah.
Because that Rogside player that hit, Thassa's turn 1,
Yeah. And
that
with the new flare, red flare, their Rograth away, like that not to cut you off, but Thoracle is never, it really should never be, Well, they just played Thassa's and Taint Pact and won. It's a 3 card combo at least, because it should always be Thassa Taint Pact counter,
Counter, yeah.
and not even just one counter. So if a lot of people go, well, it's a 2 card combo. It's like, it's not. It's a 3 or 4 card combo. And if they get it off and you can't stop them, they deserved it. They tutored for all of those counters. They played smart. They kept all their counters for themselves. Like, this was an effort that you should have stopped a long time ago. And if Rograk does it turn 1 and they just got that perfect hand and no one kept a mental misstep or, a mind break trap, you mulligan wrong.
I lost to Atali turn 2.
I've won with Atali turn 1 with a Jessica's Will. Because it's just like, oh, you have 7 cards in hand? Cool. Mana Crypt, Mountain, tap, Jessica's Will. I've got
Atali.
7. Atali. Oh, cool. I end up top decking Food Chain. GG.
Yeah. And again, those are the exceptions that make the format scary for casual players, but those aren't necessarily the I don't want to discredit tournaments because they are uber fun, but that's not the norm.
It's so unlikely that Jessica's will would resolve too. There's so many things to stop it. It's harder to stop because it's not 1 mana, so you can't mental misstep it. But like,
again, the Atali one, the pod was Atali, Blue Farm, Keurig, and then me, Blue Farm.
yeah,
I countered the first thing. Pyroblast stopped me. Other Blue Farm had nothing.
I brought this. I think I remember what you're talking. So this is the one where he was lucky enough off of Crick to get a Son half.
No,
yeah. I remember I was literally losing a Rog Sai, and I heard that, and I just went, "Ooh, sucks to be at that table."
Yep.
And that was just extreme luck to get an Atali flip that good. It could have been at that same table. He would have got, a black, creature that all it did was generate mana, which would have been useless. And then 2 counters from the blue fire players.
And I've played this guy multiple times, multiple tournaments. The level of excitement he had when it happened.
Oh yeah.
Dude, he probably has talked about it months. He would probably talk about it
I'm
now.
still talking about it.
And it's one of those things that we play to have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, even in a tournament, you're playing to have fun with a very optimal deck. I do not think that win cons is the way to do it.
Yeah.
I think that there are certain cards that may have not been meant for the format that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
That are my only exception, really. But
yeah. And to talk about Underworld Breach, since we kind of covered Thassa's, I think really the main argument that makes the most sense just generally is no one ever really runs Underworld Breach as a value. Like, I do run it as a value in Atali to get back my Lion's Eye. But I mean, if I'm getting my Lion's Eye, I am going for a combo of sorts, with Underworld Breach.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, Underworld Breach does not work as designed. I think Magic has kind of admitted that they could have designed it a little bit better. Like, you shouldn't be able to cast the same card from your graveyard over and over and over. There should be some punishment where it goes away. Most cards with that effect will exile the card that you cast rather than it hit the graveyard.
Well, you do exile 3 other cards.
Well, Yawgmoth's Will is pretty much the same, and it does exile the card if it would hit the graveyard. Every example of a card does that. Underworld Breach is the only one that doesn't. And I think they realized that it was not really the best design, and they should have done something different. But it's not so broken that it's an auto include in red. If you're not using it for a combo, most red decks don't even run it. And if you can't stop an Underworld Breach, that's another one where it's like, okay, you should go back to the blueprint of your deck. Because if you're in green, you have Boseiju, you have Endurance. There's also, like, for example, a lot of the problem with Underworld Breach is Savine's Reclamation, where it's like, I have Underworld Breach and Graveyard Savines. Why aren't you running anything to remove graveyards if it's a problem? If it's such a problem that you want it banned, why aren't you like getting rid of graveyards? Again, if you're in green, why are you not noxious revivaling the Underworld Breach to the top of their deck and they have to start over?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely multiple ways. It's not a, I don't get it in hand and know that I'm going to win.
yeah,
It's, I have the piece. How can I win with the piece?
yeah.
And I think that makes the difference. Then this is it. I've won.
It does. The only thing that I don't like about it, and it's after it resolves, which if it resolves, that's a problem. But if I'm like, okay, they're casting Underworld Breach, I do have something to say about the things they're going to cast. Well, now with Underworld Breach, they have access to every counter they've played the entire game, so nothing is going to get through. However, that's the same for Mnemonic Betrayal, where once you Mnemonic Betrayal, you have access to everybody's counters, so you're
Yeah.
pretty much going for it. Yeah, I don't think it's a problem until it gets out of hand, but if you let it get out of hand, that's on you. It's good, but it's not broken good.
I think that this next topic is where we're not going to see eye to eye a
Yeah,
lot.
so creatures that people have called for bans. Of course, Thassa's Oracle, which you've already discussed, but Bowmasters and Dockside, I hear people calling out, people that do play tournaments too, saying that both of them have problems. I
I
agree on one, I don't agree on the
I
others.
say we agree on the first one, and then, well,
Okay,
not on the
yep. No, no, no.
not on the first
I
one.
get to pick our first one then.
We will agree. We will talk about the one we agree on because it makes sense, and then the other one I'll try to explain to you while you're wrong.
Okay. So, first one, Dockside.
I thought you were gonna be like Bowmasters.
So I think Dockside is, and I will say, preface this, clearly a red player, but I do think Dockside is very healthy for the format. Just to really sum it up, if there was not the fear of Dockside, artifact enchantment decks would just
That's
speed
stupid.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be dumb.
There should also be something. The fear of Dockside is very healthy for the format. There also should be something that catches a player up if they're behind. And the thing I like about Dockside is I never discount a player that has red because I know they're a Dockside away from catching up, especially if they're green red, because then they have multiple Docksides in their deck because they can tutor it right to field.
It's really what makes Gruul an actual
Yeah.
formidable opponent.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not really fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not gonna have Dockside, why not just play Simic?
Yeah.
Because then you have
You have
access
counters. Yeah.
counters, and then you have access to the infinite mana lines of Penmans and whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, even playing, I play Gruul that's pretty much just mono red, get 7 mana, Tali. It's Godo with green, really, at the end of the day. But it is nice for me to look at my deck and go, okay, I'm going to speed off and try to get a Tali. Oh, poop, they countered it. He costs 9 now. I could realistically get close to 9 again with Dockside. Let me go into my backup plan. If it was just speed off Atali, oh, somebody countered, oh, my flips weren't good, well, poo poo, like I'm done. I think Dockside is very healthy for the format. I mean, I think a lot of people that want to ban Dockside don't remember what it was like before Dockside, which I didn't play too much back then, but Mono Blue Urza was a problem, and that problem was answered with Dockside. And you don't really see Mono Blue Urza as much anymore, and I would like to keep it that way.
I do think that, like you said, it's very healthy. It gives a key for decks that may not necessarily have the ability. and now it's a very possible option and a tutorable option that is very easy to do.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine trying to gamble or any of the green tutors. I mean, you can green tutor to field a dockside,
Yeah.
which is nasty.
I mean, the thing that I like to give it as an example when I hear people talk about an issue with dockside is why is Corvold not just the best deck in the format if Dockside's broken?
Yeah.
Because with Corvold, Dockside is tap a treasure, draw a card, get a mana. You know?
Yeah.
And Corvold has a lot going on for it because even the sack lands draw cards. And Corvold is not a top 16 contender. You'll see it slip in every once in a while. Like I know Comedian recently won with it, but that was not an easy win. You know, like I I think it's fine. I think Corvold is a really good example to point to and go, it's fine. Also, the lack of mono blue Urza, another way to go. It's fine, and if we get rid of it, he'll come back. Like
Also in the format, we play a lot of rocks in general,
yeah,
and to reset the field as well for like let's say you have 15 treasures from a smothering tithe or something. I play a dockside, and now you either give me, you know, your treasures plus,
yeah,
or you crack them and I'm able to not have as much value. I think that it's very healthy. It causes
yeah,
very much like a lot of banter between players to try to stop said problem that is now trying to face on the board. Um, but I get where you would think, because Dockside is a very value heavy.
play 2 mana card, big thing happen.
Yeah.
Like yeah,
It's I'm gonna play this. It's also a face check.
yeah,
I'm gonna play Dockside. Do you have anything to stop it? No. Okay. Well, now I've got 15 mana and I'm about to try to do a bunch of stuff.
yeah, and I mean, all of the Dockside combos. It's not like Dockside gets played and then somebody wins at instant speed and you can't stop them. A lot of it's I play Dockside. Cool. With this mana, I play a meal. Cool. A meal resolved. I'll flicker Dockside with a meal. It costs 3. I'm tapped out on mana. If it resolves, I'll get more mana, but I clearly can't add more to the stack. Oh, you lightning bolted my Dockside. Well, poop. All right, pass. Yeah, like, yeah. The other thing too is like, there are times where I don't really necessarily say people should do this, but there are times where I have a Dockside in hand and I've really been wanting to do a Dockside loop or something like that, but the artifacts have just not been there. And then someone plays a Smothering Tithe and they just get buku treasures because somebody wasn't responsible, whatever reason, you know. And then I'm the person before the person with all the treasures, and I just go, God, I really wanted to use this to win the game. However, I could play Dockside. If they keep their treasures, I'm going to win. And if they get rid of their 15 or so treasures, I'll get 3 treasures, and it's not really going to be a good Dockside, but I played a card that I'm still mana positive, and I stopped myself from losing. You know?
I think that it's definitely a healthy card.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we went ahead and discussed the one that we disagree on, and we both agree on Bowmasters.
If you want to ban Bowmasters, yeah, we agree.
No, we do have a difference in opinion on Bowmasters.
Yeah, I think just because I'm the one that says that there should be a ban list, I have put aside 5 cards that I think would make the format a little bit more healthy. So I'll let you do your argument about Bowmasters. I'll try not to really go a whole bunch into mine. And then at the end, whenever I do my ban list, we can discuss it a little bit more.
I will try really hard
Yeah.
not to argue after. I will not give you the same respect. I'm just joking. No, so hear me out. I play a draw heavy deck. And it's one of the top ones, to be honest with you. Um, Bowmasters is one of those cards that it is nice to have somewhat of a punishment for a Rhystic Study, a Mystic Remora, um, an Esper Sentinel, even, um, or better, One Ring. One Ring is one of those things where the first one not so bad. When you tap it for 3 or 4 cards, thank you. I'm
Also,
about to ping a lot of stuff.
Timna, and
Yeah, it's true too. Yeah, Tim to trigger on the stack.
to tell people that you have a Timna. If you get in with 2 and you draw, I'll kill her. So you, instead of getting in with 3 like you want to, don't be greedy. Just get in with 1, or I'll kill her.
Or she'll die.
Yeah.
See, we agree. No, there's no reason.
I'm saving. I'm percolating.
And see, this is where we agree to the most. I think that it's very healthy to have the fear of a possible bowmaster to drop down and start growing if it needs to. Like a 6, 7, 8 bow army is not, or orc army isn't crazy to think about.
Unnecessary. Too good.
It also, I may or may not run Delny, which makes it just a little bit better. Not much better, but a little.
If Bowmasters itself grew, I wouldn't really have too much of a problem with it. It's the fact that you get an extra body that routinely becomes an 8/8, and that's not, that is the least of my concern. I agree that there should be punishment for draw, and I agree that something like a Bowmasters is healthy for the format, just not what Bowmasters is right now. And I will point at Arena. Arena agrees with me, because Arena has edited Bowmasters to where on Arena itself he does not have an ETB.
It's pretty funny, this Bowmaster card here, because y'all can't see the face, but there is very much, it's not a scowl, it's more of a, I'm about to tell you something that so he just lets me talk through it, and it's right there that he's about to say something.
I have a lot more to say.
Oh, I know.
I'm holding it in.
100%. So we'll continue until he just stops me. So
on that, let's go into things that break the 4-player format that aren't Bowmasters.
That's fair.
So Smothering Tithe, Rhystic Study, and Mystic Remora are kind of the big bad 3.
There's the big 3
that were never designed for. I mean, maybe Smothering Tithe was. I can't say that, but I know Mystic and Rhystic, Commander was just a glimmer in Sheldon's eye at that point. So
I would say, from worst for it to not so bad, I would say it's Mystic, Smothering Tithe, Rhystic. And my thoughts on that is Mystic Remora, you're never going to pay the 4. You either don't play it, or you know what I mean? It's just there.
I will discuss this in more detail in my ban list.
Smothering Tithe, I know a few players that will pay the 2 all the time.
Smothering Tithe becomes your mana crypt no longer untaps when it plays, because I will just, if I have a soul ring or a mana crypt, I'll just go, okay, I don't want them to have a treasure. If I absolutely need the 2 colorless, like, yeah, I'll go ahead and, if I'm gonna win and all they get is a treasure, then yeah, whatever, I'll still try. But for the most part, it's just like, okay, if I can pay it, I am going to. There has to be a very good reason for me to not pay it.
And I would say, I agree with that 100%. And I would say Rhystic Study is more of, if everybody plays responsible, there's not going to be that big of a problem.
It's also not terrible if each player just gives you 1 card in the rotation too. Like, It's when people just go, I need to build my board. I don't care about anybody else. Draw, 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 draw. Like,
Mm,
which even on tournaments, it happens because the person justifies it because they're like, well, yeah, he gets to draw a lot, but I'm just going to try to win and it not be a problem. He stopped me. Poop. He drew into a counter. Well, sorry, guys. Like,
it's also how many cards are you drawing?
yeah.
Because that ends up being the thing. If out my rule of thumb is 3 cards ends up being a possible counter.
Hmm.
And that, I don't know why it's 3. It's just in my mind where we're at.
I mean, your deck is going to be a third mana production, so one of those is probably a land. You're probably running, because whenever I look at the decks, it's about 20 interaction, counting instants and sorceries, which is about a fifth of the deck. But I mean, at the point of where the game is, at that point, it is very likely that one of the 3 will be a counter. Now, it might not be a counter that stops your specific thing,
Yeah.
but it is a counter.
And again, that's
And that's not if they have a counter in hand and they're just waiting for a blue card.
if you asked me the formula, I wouldn't know it. I do know just from experience that if I got away with somebody drawing 4 cards, I feel very lucky.
Mm,
1 or 2, I don't feel so bad. Like
yeah.
I think that I'm good still. 3 is just that sweet spot. I think that you're probably going to have a counter.
Yeah.
However, back on topic, the Mystic Remora is the one that is by far outshines the other 2. It'll cause you, and the way I know this is it'll cause me to keep hands that are pretty much just dropping it turn 1 and then trying to keep it up for the next 3 turns. Because at that point, I don't care if you don't feed it. I'm still drawing. We're all on the same level. And if I do get 1 or 2 cards, cool.
Yeah. I will keep most of my comments for my ban list, but turn 1, Mystic Remora wins games. Like, very clearly. It's a lose-lose situation for everybody else at the table. You either don't build your field and the person's like, cool, I paid a mana for everybody to
Slow.
slow. And, you know, if they're gonna also pay that mana on the second turn. So realistically, for a mana each turn, for 2 turns, people don't build. And that's the best. Like, that's the worst. The best is Mystic Remora. They draw 3 or 4 cards off everybody dropping something. Even if people aren't going ham, feeding 1 is not unrealistic per person, and then they have a flush hand and they're way ahead anyway.
Yeah. I think that that's where I have learned moving into more of a tournament play. If I can counter Mystic Remora, it needs to happen
Oh yeah.
immediately.
I mean, if I have a mental misstep, I used to really delight on hitting soul rings. I will let people have soul rings now. If I'm like, you played a soul ring, but you're passing to somebody in blue, I'm keeping it.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I've had arguments with in tournaments where
People were mad that you countered their fish.
that I countered the fish, and I was like, you know what, man, I'd really just I'm not gonna argue with you.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna say those people are dumb, but I'm also not gonna say anything else.
I'm not gonna argue with you. I just felt like it was the play,
Yeah,
and you didn't win, which is good.
yeah,
You know, and at the end of the day, that's what really causes Mystic Remora to outshine the other 2. I do think that these cards are not necessarily meant for Commander, and I could be wrong. I don't think, I know for sure Ristic wasn't, and I know
and
for
Mystic
sure
was point like around that time too.
I know Mystic wasn't.
Yeah, I think Smothering Tide, that was understood that it could be played in Commander, but they didn't care so much. And in my mind, Smothering Tithe is not an auto include in white decks. I don't even think Blue Farm really runs it every single deck.
No, I didn't for a while.
Yeah, it's also, you pay 4 mana and you hope you get 4 mana back. Um,
I
Getting mana is good, but it's not drawing. Drawing wins games. If you have a smothering tithe and you have a lot of mana but no cards to cast or back it up, then it doesn't matter that you have a smothering tithe. Like
I would say that just like you said, it's smothering tithe is also more expensive,
it's four.
which is a lot.
Yeah,
Not that you can't drop it turn one,
yeah,
but if you drop a smothering tithe turn one, you have a good hand.
yeah, yeah.
Dropping a
You
Mystic
mulliganed very
Remora.
well. Like
Mystic Remora is easy to do. It's easy to drop. It's easy to put out. Having Ristic turn one or two is really solid too, but it's not as crazy as Remora.
I mean, tell me a 4 cost card that gets dropped on turn one. That's a CEDH card that you're not just like, oh poop, like this is a problem.
That's very true.
Like I would say One Ring. Just it comes to mind as a 4 cost that if somebody ramps it out turn one, I'm not too afraid of it.
I
But
would
also that's a problem.
I would I would argue too. It would depend on the colors.
Yeah,
So
if it's Elsha, that's a problem.
if we're looking at for the One Ring drop in turn one and they're in green,
Or it's Sushi. Yeah, like
like no,
yeah.
like no.
Like I think it's very fair to say Smothering Tithe turn one feels bad and it's very devastating. It definitely feels a lot different than a One Ring, but at the end of the day, any 4 cost card in CDH that's dropped turn one feels bad and is bad.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
Like even commanders that
yeah.
cost more than
Like if I and Grelnock is not a competitive deck at all. If I can drop Grelnock on turn one and I'm first and I can turn two swing in and get 3 extra cards in hand, basically, like it's a problem.
I will argue a little bit on Mystic Remora being a trap card for me. Um, but it's because it's so good 60 to 70% of the time at least.
Hmm.
Um, if I have the mana to play it, honestly don't care about the other cards in my hand, which could mess me up. And that has messed me up.
I'm a big data nerd. I really liked playing Hearthstone because it was strictly digital, because you could see cards and go, this card when it is in opening hand has a win rate of 55%. This card when it's in opening hand and played has a win rate of 60%.
Hmm.
There was very good data to back up whenever they would do like a change to a card. They'd be like, this card while on the surface doesn't seem bad, we notice that when it's in somebody's opening hand and they play it turn one, their win rate is 60%, which or like their win rate is far north of 50%, which is not good, And I feel like Mystic is in that territory. I mean, feels like is not a good reason for a ban, but I have more.
I would argue that if you're turn one, Mystic Remora turn if you are seat one, Mystic Remora turn one, that game at best for anybody that's after you, which is everybody,
Yeah,
is almost a loss.
yeah.
You could try to draw the game, but for the most part, I feel like you're there.
And no other color has that. I mean, turn one Ragavan, okay. Turn one Deafening Silence, good card, but still you can play around it. I mean, also Ristic Study. If somebody Ristic Studies turn one, it's
It's
playable.
solid.
Yeah, like I can. So let's say somebody plays a turn one Ristic Study, which happens quite a bit. It's a island and a mana crypt. If somebody plays Ristic and they go to me, I can play land, tap, play a free mana rock. Potentially, if it's a mana crypt, tap mana crypt, play Soul Ring, pay with a mana crypt. I am still, and we're talking about like me having a good hand, but I'm still able to do things and them not benefit. However, if that was a Mystic, a card that is easily playable turn one because it's one mana, they draw two. regardless. The 4 is unpayable.
Yeah, there's no way.
But yeah, I think I have heard a lot of people say Ristic is unhealthy for the format, and I'll just kind of spoil it. It's not on my list, but I think multiple instances of Ristic study is not healthy for the format.
I agree.
I wish there was some legend rule where it was like only one Ristic study can exist, and if a second person casts it, the first one goes away. The problem there is multiple Ristics, but if there's multiple Ristics and they resolve and no one has anything to say about it, there's a bigger problem there. Yeah,
I agree with that as well. And I play a deck that's my initial blueprint is to draw as much stuff as I possibly
yeah.
can. So, um, it sounds maybe counterproductive for me to talk about Mystic Remora being not the most fair, but there's not a blue deck that will not run Ristic Mystic,
Hmm.
period. Like,
And honestly, I almost would advocate that tax effects in general should not stack. If there is a tax effect,
I could see that.
you only choose one. So, like, let's say there's a Ristic study and a Mystic study out. I would play a card. All of those triggers would go on the stack, and the rule would be I choose one, and then all of the others fall off. That would be fair too. That's never going to happen. This
It'd
is
be very
fantasy world.
be,
Yeah,
be
yeah,
very complicated to adjust.
yeah.
But I
Multiple instances of Ristic study is bad, but also in a 4-player, like it's really easy to just go, well, there's 3 other players that could have stopped it. Yeah,
yeah,
so it's balanced. And I definitely agree with that with Ristic study. Just to kind of sum up the ban conversations, I've also heard really good value pieces people want to ban. The one that comes to mind is One Ring. I mean, we've brought it up several times. It's a multi-format all-star. People, there was a tournament at the beginning of July that someone missed their One Ring trigger for the protection from everything, and they lost all of their energy counters. And because of that, there was a problem with the match because they should have never lost their energy counters because there was that protection from everything trigger. I get it. I mean, I don't think this should ever be a reason to ban a card, but I mean, One Ring is also $120. The answer there is they just need to reprint it with a universe within. Honestly,
yeah.
I'm never going to hear, well, it should be banned because it's $120. It's like, unless it's on the list,
You
no.
you don't necessarily hear price points on CEDH if it's full CEDH pods,
Yeah.
unless it's something like a time twister or
Oh yeah.
something realistically, uh, eight to $2,000 a high.
Yeah.
It's most of I'm gonna say us CEDH players. We go for those type of cards anyway because it's something we really like to do. I would also say that a lot of tournaments also have a proxy limit. So,
Hmm.
if I wanted to run a time twister, give me a proxy.
Yeah. It could be one of my 10 to 15 proxies. Yeah. I mean, I'll really never listen to an argument of price just because there is proxies, whatever. Like price should never be a reason to ban a card. But I will argue that One Ring is way too good. It's one of those things that the moment it came out, everybody was like, is an auto include in every CDH deck. It's colorless. It can go in every CDH deck. It gives all of these decks that would normally not have card draw, like mono red, etc. Card draw. And on top of it, 4 for that effect is good. Commander doesn't really care too much about their life, so the burden counters don't matter. And then on top of it, you can basically use it as a somewhat Angel's Grace, effect if you cast it from hand.
I
And
would say
then,
that's the most broke part about it. The draw isn't so bad.
yeah,
I would say that, it's also what makes it fairly good is to be able to be protected from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really see it being broken in every color. I think green has a bigger advantage with it, with like a
Mono red too. Like I remember I was playing Burry at the time that this came out, and I was just like, I can load up my hand. Like, what? Yeah. And it
maybe.
is. I mean, it's still good in Atali. I don't think I run it in Atali, and if I do, I haven't seen it in weeks. You know, but it's a big card. It's four. It's really hard to justify four, and even with One Ring having all the bells and whistles and everything like that, I think there was fear of it before, and then we tested it in CEDH for a long time, and a lot of people put it in and then ended up taking it out after a month or two because they realized
It just doesn't perform as well.
it was big and it was slow. Um, I don't think it's a problem anymore. I wanted to talk about One Ring because it's one of those cards that it's like this was the most feared card out of the Lord of the Rings set as far as unhealthiness for Commander, and it's not a problem because people played it, they didn't like it, they took it out, and then in the decks it's a problem for people adjusted.
Hmm.
Um, and I will say too that like kind of going back to that Apple of Eden card that we brought up in the shuffle up, it was a card that I looked at it and I went, it's not a One Ring, and I don't even have One Ring, so it's just off the plate.
Yeah, it's almost there.
Yeah, which in itself is a problem. But I mean, I think there's cards that people are afraid of, and then on paper it looks like it's really scary, but in the game, after a while, you realize it's not a problem.
I think that people feared green with One Ring with the Seedborn Muse, which
Yeah,
is Seedborn Muse in and of itself is probably the problem, not necessarily the One Ring. And being able to
yeah.
tap and draw
I mean, it's also five, and like if you're
for
drawing
9 mana.
that many things on, well, yeah, like but usually you would have One Ring already like building up, and then you'd get Seedborn. Um, it's just, I mean, really just not a problem. Green is not a color that goes, I have a lot of instants that I can do stuff with. It was kind of a problem in Kennen, but Kennen has a 13% conversion right now. And you were doing Kennen abilities. I don't even think Kennen runs One Ring, even though it runs Seedborn, because you don't want to draw on Kennen. So
Yeah, I could see that.
yeah,
I would say that with putting another feather in green to have that option is interesting.
mm-hmm.
Um, again, I don't think that it's end all be all. It's definitely not Remora.
Yeah,
There's not as big of an issue.
yeah, and I mean, I think just One Ring is a good example of we were scared of it and then tested it, and everybody went, it's four. You know?
It's okay.
Yeah. So that's a good user story of if you see something and it's scary, give it a chance and don't call for bans right away. Let it hit the format, kind of see what happens with the format. One Ring was scary, and then Bowmasters was really the problem. Yeah.
So we were talking about One Ring and how One Ring was not as scary in hindsight.
Mm,
I would say, and this is where we disagree, it's the same thing with Bowmasters. And again,
yeah.
this is where that face is at.
So we'll go into my ban list. So since you said that there is no need for bans, I'll go into mine.
Yeah, sure. I got you.
And I mean, for sure, discussion. This is not a, well, now it's my podcast. So my ban list.
I no longer have a mic.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, just
Cut it off. All right. So my ban list is 5 cards, and this is. I'm not saying that the format is broken and we need to ban these 5 cards. I'm mostly saying that the format is fairly stale, and there are certain decks that are overperforming. While I don't think that these decks should be neutered to the point we don't see them anymore, there are cards in here that if they were taken away we would see some more variety in the format, and these cards would be easily replaceable in the decks that they overperform in. Bowmasters is top of the list. Tainted Pact, Intuition, Nicobolas, Dragon God, and Mystic Remora. I would say Bowmasters, Mystic Remora, top for me. Bowmasters, again, I don't really think that Bowmasters is unhealthy. I think it's unhealthy where it is. The fact that it has flash and an ETB and also grows this giant 8/8 comes out with a second body that you can sack it. Black wants to sack creatures in order to get mana, tutor. Also combined with green, you can neoform a Bowmaster into a or Bowmaster army into a 1 cost. You can Eldritch Evolution a Bowmaster army into a Thassa's. It's for 2, that's a lot of value. In Arena, they did take out the ETB to where you have to draw to get that. You have to have an opponent draw to get that body. I think that's pretty fair. Bowmasters with wheels is just stupid. Like the fact that someone can wheel and then you just Bowmaster on flash instant speed and deal 21 damage to whatever you want is dumb. I feel like there should be a card very similar to Bowmasters. I'm not really a Magic designer, so I'm not even gonna attempt to say what it should be like. I don't think that the army body is fair. I don't think that it should have flash, or if it does have flash, I think it should cost 3 to 4 instead of 2. Also, just for me personally, and Bowmasters affects my deck building a little bit more than other people. It really sucks that someone can play a Bowmaster and I can go, okay, I won't draw anymore because I want to keep my mana dork safe. And then someone else can be like, well, I'll just be real greedy and draw because I know it's not hitting my stuff. And then because of an action that someone else took, now they can punish me rather than the person that drew it. I think there should be a Bowmasters fix where it's like if a player draws a card, you can target them or any permanent that they control for damage, or any creature that they control. It's just for 2 mana, it does a ton. It's like a good example of Bowmasters is if I have a clone and there's a Bowmasters on the field, there's not much else that I will clone rather than the Bowmasters. And I purely just want to get rid of it. Like, I don't even really care for the triggers myself. What do you have to say about Bowmasters?
So he just turned my mic on. No, I'm just joking. No. I get it. I mean, there's definitely good points to it. I think that in general, though, being able to have that person with the Mystic Remora think about drawing that card, or the Rhystic Study think about drawing that card, because they both are May abilities, is useful.
Yeah.
I do see it being strong, and that could be a mana value.
Yeah.
Would it be worth it at 3? I don't know.
My biggest problem with it was before Bowmasters was printed, there were cards that occupied that space. There was cards that restricted people to only draw 1. Narset was 1 generic blue. Couldn't play it at instant speed, but you could go, I'm going to play this. My opponents can't draw more than 1 card. Now that that's resolved, I'm going to wheel. Cool. They only get to draw 1. And that was one of those things that to be on the other end of it, it felt bad. However, it was fair because there was a planeswalker and a sorcery that resolved that no one could do anything about. There were cards that occupied that draw hate space that no longer see play because of Bowmasters. Like Spirit of the Labyrinth was another one. So I think it took out a lot of interesting deck building, and they went, I'm cool with these people drawing a whole bunch of cards because I get all of this great benefit now. So now people are drawing more cards when they could have been stopped. So I think it occupies a space that was already healthy and pushed it to that extreme.
I think the biggest thing is that it's been updated in Arena
Yeah,
and not out in real life,
yeah.
so to speak.
It's format warping. The thing that I always think about when it comes to bans is, did this completely warp the format? And now every time Magic has responded by printing 1/2 creatures rather than 1/1s.
Mm.
Your 1/1s always felt fairly ephemeral, but like you can't even really play the clone that when it's targeted it goes away. That
Phantasmal.
that was a much better card, and now Bowmasters. Also, green, that is what green does, is put out a lot of 1/1 Manadorics, and green was already not in a good place. It was already the weakest color, and now it's definitely the weakest color. So I mean, crazy value does too much for its mana cost. By itself can change the game. That's another thing. If Bowmasters and another card was a combo that warped the game, I'd be like, I don't really care because you have to have both in hand. With Commander, it's like, okay, Bowmasters is an instant speed creature that does all of this stuff, and it's always valuable by itself. That's kind of like my thought process behind it. The other thing, Tainted Pact is another thing that, for different reasons, I think it should be banned. So Tainted Pact is a card that it benefits decks that build with a singleton restriction, which outside of your basic lands, that is your restriction in Commander already. So it's a card that is supposed to have a drawback of, well, you can run this really powerful tutor in quotation marks, that the restriction is if you hit the same card within your search, you're done. Which Tainted Pact, that's never a problem. And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but then in CEDH, you can't run multiple basic lands, which no CEDH deck that is in black outside of Crick runs multiple basic lands, if any basic lands.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a card that really should not exist in the Commander format to begin with, and if that was the only problem, it wouldn't be on the list. The fact that it is a forbidden tutor that doesn't really put you at a disadvantage. You're not going to cast a Tainted Pact and then lose because your card is in the top 6, and it gives redundancy to Demonic Consultation. So it's 3 cards, choose 2 in the Thassa's Oracle. Giving redundancy to Demonic Consultation with Tainted Pact is a problem. It's also another, like, it's a really good instant speed tutor to hand that if you cast it, there's no worry about losing the game.
I've also used it in a breach line as the tutor to get my
Yeah.
and didn't think of it that way when I first started it, but definitely was decent.
Instant speed tutors to hand is a problem when they're that cheap.
Yeah, I would say it's also I would rather have tainted than consultation just because I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
And I would use consultation is solely for Thassa.
Consultation can be eaten by mental misstep too.
That's true.
And the other thing is, it's just boring. Like, there has been times where someone casts, they're like, I'm in a bind, I need to do a forbidden shooter. I'm gonna sell my soul to, insert whatever scary thing here, and I'm gonna just chance it all. Demont consultation. If it's in the top six, I lose. If it's not in the top six, I win. And everybody's just like, grasping their head. They're like, oh, please be in the top six. Like that's a fun situation. But whenever somebody's just like, I really need to get a card, I don't care about what I exile. In fact, there are some times where, with intuition, I want to exile my Mist Hollow Griffin or my Squee, or
Hmm.
where you get two cards with intuition or with Taint Pact instead. Um, it's just not, you don't have that. Oh my god, the game is a coin flip now. Like
It's definitely more specific.
yeah, it's those two things where the restriction of singleton format was supposed to be a make people not want to run it, but that is the restriction on Commander. It's boring, and then on top of it, it gives redundancy to Thassa's Oracle. I think for the health of the format, Tainted Pact would be a good hit. Mystic Remora is kind of my next one, where I think we kind of covered this pretty well, but just the four is really unpayable at the end of the day in CDH. Like, it's not pay four and they get a card. It's pretty much anytime you cast a non-creature spell, they draw for one. Like we said, it's just lose lose. Like, I either slow down to the point where the person that played Mystic Remora somewhat gets two free turns, with very little, to stop them. Or, I just don't care about it and I let them draw a bunch of cards and then they're ahead anyway. Mystic Remora is easily castable on turn one, is a huge problem.
If you have it in hand, it is casting.
Yeah, yeah.
You're hitting it. It's your first spell.
It's and same thing. It's kind of this redundancy aspect of Rhystic. Like, Rhystic is a fair version of the card that lasts forever. Blue doesn't really need Mystic on top of Rhystic, on top of free counters, on top of like. Um, I think we covered it pretty well in the other part, but one of the higher cards on my recommendation for bans. Next is intuition. Instant speed tutor that really, at the end of the day, it's not an auto include, but it's like Underworld Breach, where there are decks where I just consider running it as a value tutor. It also is off color. The fact that there's an instant speed two-hand tutor in blue is very strange. That kind of breaks blue's color identity, and blue is already great. We have Mystic, Rhystic, Intuition, free counters.
Yeah, I get you.
It's too much, and the fact that
I would say it's under Remora as far as whatever, just because Remora is more playable. It's the one. However, Intuition, any breach line, you're gonna want it.
Yeah, and I mean, if somebody is, I think that
with white.
Yeah, the really, when I think about Underworld Breach, the reason Underworld Breach is not something that I want to ban is because Underworld Breach, if you assemble it yourself, it's not a problem. When you can just go, oh good, I have Intuition, I have an instant speed 3-mana tutor, I'll keep up 3. If I need to stop somebody's win attempt, I have the 3. If not, I'm just going to, on somebody's end step, tutor, get everything where I need to be, untap with full mana start is a problem. If it was sorcery speed, I probably wouldn't have it here. But just the fact that it's a blue card that is one of the best tutors in the game is bad.
Makes not Thassa. It makes Breach Line for Blue Farm,
Yeah.
very consistent.
I think hitting intuition would be what Blue Farm needs to see less of a share in tournaments. It's just too good, and really, even outside of Blue Farm, I don't really want to just go. Well, I want to take Blue Farm out. Let's get rid of intuition. I am doing it on this next card, but intuition is just go get 3 cards from your deck, win. At the end of the day, like that might as it should just be pay 3 instant, go get 3 cards out of your deck, do a win attempt this turn.
Mm.
And then my last card is Nico Bolas, Dragon God. Like I said, I think Sisay causes a very big design problem. This is the one on the list that I think is more optional. I could have left it off, but I do think that Sisay is just going to become more and more of a problem as more cards are printed. Um, and it's her restriction of it being legend, like needing to be legendary, is not as big of a restriction as it used to be. And also, they're printing a lot of legendary cards too, like legendary enchantments, lands, all of that stuff.
I was surprised with this one specifically. I think that this isn't necessarily it. You could insert whatever keeps Sisay as viable,
mm,
and I think that this is probably it. But
yeah,
I think that it's more of a hit to um, seeing a Sisay at every single tournament,
yeah,
seeing a Blue Farm at every single tournament. That's really the problem with the format, in my opinion. And I play the top tier deck. That's what I like to do.
and I have zero problem with the creature based Sisay. It's the crazy planeswalker, you know,
It's consistent.
yeah, like Nico Bolas to field for 5 ability. Like I can counter if they hardcast Nico Bolas. Like Nico Bolas is the card that I've heard from Sisay players that they're like, if I draw that card, it's over.
Mm,
It needs to stay in my deck. I have zero problem with the legendary Sisay creature build, and I do feel like that's what Magic intended it to be. But then they added every planeswalker has a super type of legendary. So even Saheeli, who is just as planeswalker, she's been errata to be legendary.
mm,
So you can go get her, which, some people don't know. And I'm not going to correct them.
mm.
But it's the thing that is unfair, and the thing that makes it unfair is Nico Bolas comes out, every planeswalker has all abilities of every other planeswalker, and then it just breaks the game. And it's also not a like Underworld Breaches combo. I do all of these things. Cool, there's a lot of actions, but I do end up winning the game. Nico Bolas is okay, this hit the field. Now that this hits the field, it breaks everything. And I have to explain how it breaks everything because he has, this and blah, blah. Like the first time you ever see this Sisay combo, it's like, what? And they have to go into this explanation. It's not fun. It's really weird. They can just pull it out of their deck. I don't, I think this does completely break the Planeswalker Sisay build. I think that's fine. And maybe, if you play the Planeswalker Sisay build and you're like, yeah, that only slows me down. I can still play the same deck. Great. That's what I want. I just
I
want it
would
slowed down.
put it in the comments
Yeah.
because I would like to know if that's still a thing.
Yeah.
I would say that hitting intuition or hitting tainted pact, whereas tainted pact's not as big of a deal for Blue Farm.
Yeah.
I think intuition would be.
Yeah.
And I think that again, I don't necessarily have a problem with the format. I don't think that it needs a ban list. I do think that we are seeing a tad bit of stagnant staleness
Yeah.
with it.
And this ban list suggestion is purely for that. I don't want any deck to not be playable anymore. I just want the decks that are way, way above and beyond. I want them to still be playable, but slowed down a little bit. And I feel like these 5 cards are a pretty fair way to do it. Maybe not Nico Bolas, Dragon God. I'm really I can't say that I want intuition banned in Blue Farm and then be like, don't touch Sisay at all.
Well,
know?
you would see Sisay
Yeah,
be just like overrun, like it
yeah,
would overrun,
yeah. Uh,
and
I feel like the Nicol Bolas Dragon God is a very fair way to where it's like, yeah, we did hit a bunch of this stuff in Blue Farm. In order to not create a monster with Sisay, Nicol Bolas Dragon God has to go too.
mm,
And there's good reason that he needs to go, but he by himself is not a huge problem.
I I could see that,
Yeah.
and even with Bowmasters, I get it to a degree. Again, my stance isn't necessarily um, so conflicting between yours. I just found that you thought Bowmasters should be um, taken or changed or fixed or whatever, and that One Ring was somewhat okay, and I just thought that was funny
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's almost the same problem
Yeah, yeah.
from the
Um
same set,
and
to be honest.
I'm completely fine with every card on this list just getting a fixed reprint where it's, you know, maybe not Tainted Pact. I think Tainted Pact should just be gone. But like if they did Arrow Masters or something like that, like I would be okay if they printed a fixed copy and they're like, now that we have this fixed copy, Bowmasters is gone. Like
This is Bowmasters is this card.
yeah,
It's interchangeable here.
yeah. And I mean they did that with Rhystic Study. Rhystic Study is the fixed version of Mystic Remora. Like I feel like that's a good way to look at it and go, Mystic Remora should be out, but Rhystic Study is the fixed version.
Yeah, and I will state my opinion again. I think that the format itself, be it that it's getting to be stagnant, I don't think banning cards is going to fix it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately what'll happen is new decks will take the place, and those could be worse than that current
But then
format.
that's power creep, and that is a huge problem in collectible card games. So like
Hmm.
yeah, it's either way is not good. I agree with you that they should just print bigger problems, but then it becomes a bigger problem that needs to be fixed down the line. So
Yeah, and
usually bans is a healthy way to do it.
but that's our that's our take on it. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly,
If you guys have a ban list that you're just like, I want to put it in the comments and let's start a discussion, I would love it. I probably will normally with the comments, I kind of read them and I try not to start a new discussion outside of the podcast, but I'll do it here.
we don't do that very well.
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever comment happens, it's it's a segment.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, this it's a long podcast, but I think it's an important one. Made it all the way through. Thank you so much. Please share it, comment, rate us if you're on YouTube, like it, subscribe, all those things. We probably will be at a tournament when this episode goes live. I would really like in a couple episodes, maybe the next one after this, to kind of discuss what our tournament was like so that you guys not only have the survival guide that we featured previously, but then you're like, okay, here's a real life history of how that mentality helped them, or even though they feel like they go to a lot of tournaments, they still messed up. It's cool to hear that they messed up. Like it's nice to know I'm not alone.
No,
Yeah.
I completely failed my last tournament. I don't think I won one. So you're, it happens ultimately.
Yeah.
I will say that be it that we're going to multiple tournaments over the next few weeks, I think that I'm going to be on the lookout for maybe people that aren't using the tricks.
Mm.
You know what I mean? To kind of be like, okay, well, this person clearly they didn't bring a snack and they went and ate a big lunch and now they're sluggish.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, whatever it may be. Not necessarily because most of the people at the tournaments are good players, but just that extra oomph, I
Yeah.
guess, what could make it better.
Yep. Well, look forward to that, and we'll see you guys soon.
See ya.
All right. Bye.